All right, let's dive into social media. So, as we can see, people are using social media. Some of our bishops right there getting their selfie on. So I would just always use that as a fun picture to show that this is a thing that has moved through every level of our society and every level of our church. It is essentially the water cooler of today's time. It's where people gather, whether you love it, whether you dislike it, or whether you're just all confused about it. It doesn't change the fact that social media is one of the primary ways that people communicate with each other. Now, it doesn't have to be the only way, but I would say that it at least behooves us as churches and leaders to understand some of the workings of social media. And so we're going to get into some of that today and kind of figure out the groups that are using social media, maybe even why they're using it and how we can use it as well. So this is our friend, Mr. Rogers. And so I like to use this because whether you know the history of Mr. Rogers or not, it's Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Some people know him, some people don't. But he came at a very pivotal time in technology and used TV to share a message of caring and kindness. And so I think it's always interesting to look at Mr. Rogers as an example, because either we can embrace where technology is going, or we can bemoan it and get left behind. And just always, to me, always a good example of someone in a program that was able to do that. And as we have a message of inspiration and hope, as we talked about earlier, being able to utilize a medium like social media is well within our means. Now, we covered values and visions in the first one, but in my book, Values and Visions is just that important that it doesn't hurt to look at it again. This is just a little different depiction of the values and vision. As I said before, that is always befitting that we do church marketing first, because those values and visions and those questions that we ask ourselves now becomes the presence that we take into our social media ministry. In our first presentation, as far as defining what values are, and I think I defined it as your DNA, it is the thing that makes us us. And this is just a additional one to, it tells people who you are as a church. It is the thing that makes you you. For many of our churches, while theology is obviously a key piece of what we do, when it comes to social media, what we have to figure out is that theology still becomes important, but most people won't flock to you or they are not coming to your social media presence for theology. It's just a reality, right? When people are looking at your social media presence, it's more about the personality, because oftentimes what the people we serve are looking at is this church a fit for me? Or is this a friend? Of course, you say people on Facebook as friends. So it's more of a personality thing on social media, and that doesn't diminish the theology of our churches, but it also shows that there's another level as far as social media involvement. Vision. Vision sets your church on a course towards a desired destination. And this I love. So we talked about in church marketing, and again, some of this is review, is that as we look at our mission and then we roll into vision, I think those two lines right there are really a great depiction of vision. We are going to blank, but we are not going to this place. We are going to Disneyland, but we are not going to Busch Gardens. It's an example of the thing that we are doing as our own individual churches. I think we discussed being the best you as a church that you can be. And so it doesn't mean that Busch Gardens is bad. It just means that it's not in line with what it is that we're trying to achieve. And then not only do you have to be able to decide where you're going, you have to find some way to get buy-in, which is a whole nother discussion. And then be somewhat excited about going in that direction. So for churches, I mean, whether you're on social media or not using social media, at least the one thing that we would probably recommend is at least get a Facebook page. It is still the most used overall amongst the social media platforms. Of course, there are some others, and we'll dive into that. We're going to first look at Facebook because, again, Facebook is king amongst most populations and most demographics, mainly because users spend 50 minutes per day on the platforms, daily active users, monthly active users, and to be frank, even though it says daily active users somewhere around 1 billion, that may even be outdated. It may be more than that at this point in time, especially when we start to think about global numbers. So it is definitely by far the number one or the primary usage for most, whether churches are using it for church reasons or just for personal reasons. That's the water cooler. That's the primary water cooler is Facebook. One thing we want to talk about now is boosting. And so boosting is essentially a process, it's a function by which you can push your ad out to more users. Typically costs little to nothing, maybe $5 to $20. But boosting is definitely something that can widen your gaze as it pertains to events and things that you want others to know. So pro tips for Facebook boosting, this is one that I think churches probably don't take enough credence in. I don't know why, but a lot of churches have Facebook pages, but we don't push our members to go like our Facebook pages. That's an easy way to get more views. So if your church has a Facebook page, tell the members, hey, go like our page, go like our page. You can put it in a bulletin. I'm not opposed to, depending on the pastor and what how they feel, I'm not opposed to, hey, guys, go like the sermon for today or go like this event. Because essentially what you're doing, and there's 1,000 different algorithms and equations that Facebook use, but the more people that like it and the more people that view it, but more particularly the more people that like it, it goes into the equation and it starts to go, more eyes will begin to see it. Essentially, Facebook has created it to where if this is popular or if this is trending based on the number of likes that it has, then we will show it to more people. And so the easiest cradle of people that we have is right here in our churches. But a lot of times we don't ask our church members to actually like a post or to like our Facebook page. So that's one way of boosting. Another way of boosting is, and this is all without the boost function where you would pay for it, is, or this is part of boost function, is if you're going to boost something, you can create a path within the boosting function. I'm going to show you what it looks like, to where we could say Christians often have Christian friends. So what you can do is if you're holding a Christian event or just an event in general, you can base your boosting to show it to friends of your friends. So again, if you have 10 friends, and it can be boosted to show to their friends as well. And again, these are just little nit things that you can do on Facebook, because most of our churches have Facebook or personal Facebook pages. And then lastly, with boosting, always have a goal, because you're probably going to end up spending a little bit of money, not a whole bunch. I wouldn't recommend spending a lot of money, but somewhere in between $5 to $20. Somewhere in the 5 to 10 range is usually good enough. But again, what that does is that faces the equation to push it out to more people. But if you're going to spend money, then one, have a budget for your event, or even for an annual budget for what your church is willing to spend on boosting, and also have a goal. Because if you're going to spend money, you don't want to just be spending it for the sake of spending it. But basically all that is a show of what the boosting page looks like and how you can customize it to reach certain audiences. Because that's what it's really all about. It's about using it to get to the audiences that you would like to get to. I'll give you an example. I like this example because it's kind of out of the box. There was a church that I worked with in Las Vegas, and they use the boosting. Obviously, Las Vegas has fights and things of that nature. I'm not condoning fighting. Nobody thinks that. But they knew that the people in their area would probably come out and watch a mixed martial arts fight. So they chose to boost and reach out to people who had already liked mixed martial arts things. And that's just to give you an example of how you can customize to get to certain people for certain events. Very much in contrast or juxtapose, if you're having an Easter egg hunt, you might be able to reach out to people who have children, or certain zip codes or near certain schools. It just really depends. But I would say at least investigate boosting, and there's a number of resources on how to boost. Again, we have a lot of things at umcom.org. And it's not something that you just get good at overnight. You got to kind of practice with it. You got to experiment. But as we talked about in our first session, it is a resource that you have. And that's just another boosting page. Yes, so the question is there a difference between boosting all the time or boosting specific events? I would probably, there's a difference, one, but I think you probably want to prioritize. Because of course we're going to have a lot of events, but that goes into your goal setting of what's our goal for this event, and you might want to boost this, which actually brings to this point of avoid bulletin boarding is what they call it. And bulletin boarding in the social media is essentially just boosting every event, and everything you have is an ad. And again, this is a conversation it's very expansive, but Facebook is always changing their equations on how they show things. Christine. They're always changing how they show things. And so they have actually got to the point to where if a organization or church is only showing advertisements and they can tell if you have comments or are engaged in other different ways, then it makes it less likely that they'll show your things. So if you're going to boost things, I would prioritize and say, okay, here, if we have 5 events, here's the 2 or 3 that we really want to push. And then you might use your Facebook platform to do other things, comment or engage and show other ways. But I would definitely not try to boost everything.
That you can customize your audience depending on the event. At any time you can customize your audience. And one example was about the food pantry. So he'd select a certain type of audience for that, and then a different audience for Christmas program. And so you can set your pricing, your budget for up to so many people. Once you reach that number, then it stops the ad. It doesn't continue and keep charging you. It'll stop when it reaches your budget. You can also set it for per clicks. If your goal is to sell tickets or to get people to sign up for your newsletter, it'll track how many times it's clicked. And so it could go on for 2 or 3 weeks past your event if you have it set where it's going to bill you per clicks. You can select the end date. It could be that you set your budget for the $20 per day for 7 days. So your overall budget is whatever 7 times 20, 140. Yay! But yeah, so you'll see, you'll get all these options. There's nothing tricky about it other than just allowing your mind to think beyond whatever it is that you're trying to, well, I want to target everybody. Think about, well, who is everybody? Imagine those people in your mind. If it is families, and think about, well, what are the things are families interested in? They might be looking for, if it's families with kids, maybe they're involved in schools. So you add that as part of your audience classification so that you can start creating this really honed in audience demographic of families that are connected to schools. Maybe it's something that has to do with health and wellness, your event. And so maybe it's also individuals that have liked or followed fitness locations or whatever. You can really customize it. So just think beyond the questions that are there. Imagine the people that you want to have at your event and what are their interests.
Yeah, all good feedback. And the one thing that I would add, because I think you guys are really hitting it, is what it speaks to is preparation. Having an ideal of who it is we want to touch, what it is, our budget, how far along we want to do it ahead of time. So what I would challenge each person to do is, once you look at boosting, make a plan. I would probably discourage going in and just boosting. Make a plan, again, as we talked about, even if there's 5 events, and figure out, of the 5 events, what 2 do we want to boost? Make a plan for it. And then once you prepare, like Christina said, there's nothing really tricky about it, but go in with a plan and a goal, versus just going in. A good way to engage is ask a question about hot topics in the news. Half of what social media is, or most of what social media is a tool for engagement. Most people don't really frequent social media for quote unquote information. They're going there for engagement. They're going there as a break, or to be able to connect with others. Again, it is the water cooler. Where the tip I would give you there is, if you're going to go that route of doing hot topics or asking a question, putting out there, ask open-ended questions for the sake of building conversation, for the sake of allowing people to engage with each other. If you say, do you like traditional or conventional sermons? They're probably going to pick traditional or conventional. But the fact of the matter is, nobody has engaged with anybody. They're just answering a question. So you might ask a question, says, what is it about traditional worship that appeals to you? Now we can have a conversation and talk about it. So that's just another tidbit there. Some of the best practices for Facebook is posting somewhere between 1 and 4 o'clock. I mean, if you just think about your own day, the front half of the day is typically the busiest. So people are most engaged, I find, or, at least the studies would tell us, towards the latter half of the afternoon leading into the evening. Post later in the week. Front half of the week is okay, but again, just think about everyday life. Front half of the week is probably going to be the busiest part of the week. Latter half of the week is starting to lead us into the blessed weekend that everybody is looking for. And so that's when people really start to pay attention. And again, you might find people on social media all the time, but what we're looking for is not just eyes on social media. We're looking for actual engagement. And that's usually when people are most engaged. Don't be afraid to share stories. As we talked about hot topics, comment on current events in the community. And one thing that I've found to be very interesting is just pretty much a normal place for us right now, for those that frequent social media, is post leaders or whomever is in charge of social media accounts can post about 15 to 30 minutes before a church service. Because while people are waiting on church service, the likelihood that they're on their phone is high. It's very high. We have some head nodding. It's like, yeah, that's true. So, post before a church service, and you can post information, but a lot of times it's a good opportunity to prepare people for the service, so again, we talk about hope, we talk about inspiration, we talk about those who may be sitting at home and that may be the give for them to say, I'm going to go ahead to church, or, whatever the case may be. But having the ability to post 15 to 30 minutes before a church service is always key. Facebook Live, which is kind of a thing now, if I may break it down some, is that essentially they're using Facebook Live for sermons. Audio can sometimes be hit or miss, as David offered, maybe push it closer, but definitely also using Facebook Live to tap into the YouTube access and make it, giving people a place where that can be archived. So that's a great tool for it. I was also going to say, using a tripod is always big. Depending on what your church looks like or where the pastor is or what you're trying to capture, I think we've discussed that you can either go vertical or you can go landscape. I prefer landscape just because I can't see vertical. Landscape just works better for my eyes. But that's another thing for Facebook Live.
I just want to add just one thing for those of you that are using live feeds of your sermons. You need to be, or service, not just the sermons. You need to be very careful what you're saying from your sermon, from your pulpit, or from the prayers, because Nancy Cushman, my boss, the West District Superintendent, was watching online when she had her eye surgery and couldn't go out and visit with you all, and she noticed that a lot of the live services were giving names, first and last names of people who are in hospital, who are traveling on vacation. So you got to be very careful of what you're raising up as prayer concerns, because there are people that control and find out who in your congregation isn't around. And we know how easy it is to look up somebody and find out where they live.
Just have here, let people know they're in the shot, depending on where you have your Facebook Live or your live streaming. We don't want anybody caught doing embarrassing things in front of the camera. And in lieu of the conversation we were just having there, which is a great conversation, we have that CCS, thank you, website up there for licensing. And we also have the CCLI. And I agree with all that feedback that's important, Christina.
So I just wanted to remind everyone, or in case you weren't aware, so the conference does pay for the CCLI license for every church, but that's just the copyright license. If you are starting to stream your services, you need to purchase an additional license, streaming and podcasts. So you would need that license if you're going to start to do that. It's just a common question we get all the time at the conference office. Oh, we're streaming now, but you guys are paying for our license, right? No, we only pay for the copyright license, which allows you to have the lyrics up on the slides or to make copies for your choir to practice with. It doesn't cover you for streaming.
Yeah, thank you. That's very important stuff. I see you, Carla. And so, definitely take heed in the CCLI, and that's great that the conference pays for that. That's fantastic. And again, don't hesitate to visit those websites. And once you start streaming, be mindful that there are other licenses in play for you to be able to do that without hiccups. Carla, you have something for us?
2 things. One, how can a local church obtain their license numbers so that they can subscribe to Song Select for CCLI? And could you repeat the information about how to obtain the license on streaming?
So just go to ccli.com. You can type in your question right on the homepage and it directs you to whatever you need to find. If you want information about your specific license number for the CCLI, the copyright part, you can call the conference office 602-266-6956 and ask to talk to me, Christina, and I can get that for you if you don't have it. But I bet you that if you go to your worship leader or whoever that creates your PowerPoint slides, they would know your license number as well, because we didn't change it by paying for your local church copyright license. It's still the same thing. It's just the bill comes to us now. And CCLI also can do the other license that you need for streaming. So that's why I'm sending you first to the CCLI website. And then if you need additional help, you can contact me at the conference office.
Fantastic. Carla, did you have something else for us? Okay, good. This is all great conversation, because obviously copyright is a thing. And it's better to get in front of that issue than to be behind it, because nobody really wants to deal with that. So no, good feedback, and thank you for everybody chiming in. And again, if anything else comes up, don't hesitate to add that to our conversation. So that pretty much, from a Facebook perspective, just on a foundation of talking about some of the things, how people are using it. The big thing that I think we tackle or got a chance to talk about is definitely some of these copyright issues, because even as Facebook is concerned, that's where a lot of churches are trying to live and ask questions about how do we do those type of things. And I think you can learn how to do it. I think the thing that gets missed more times than not is how do we handle the copyright issue, the music issue. What can we play? What can we not play? All right, some just other social medias that's obviously prevalent in our social media conversation. just a sign for Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and we'll kind of dive into those right now as well. So outside of Facebook, the emerging kind of social media platform is Instagram. Instagram is very much picture and video heavy. So on Facebook, where you might be about posts or again, boosting or advertisements, the big thing about Instagram is if you're going to have pictures and videos, Instagram is likely the place to go. And as we talked about kind of earlier, our attention span is from here and is now going here. So pictures kind of rule the day. I have this here just as a sign of where we talked about advertising on Facebook. While you can put an advertising on Instagram, it's not really the use for it. The use for it is more of a social connection for Instagram. So if you're using Instagram as a platform to engage with others, my recommendation is use a picture and then have a sentence or two, really a sentence, two if you need to, or if you have to, of what that picture is about. But Instagram is all about community and engagement through these pictures, not really a posting type platform as Facebook would be used in that way. Instagram Stories is another great tool that they have on Instagram. Again, using the kind of platform of pictures and video, it allows you to take different pictures and then build a story. So let's just say your church is going to be working in the community that day, whether it's food bank or whether it's working with vets or whatever the case may be. You could take 2 hours of pictures and then kind of build it into a story. And is there to engage and help people kind of give them a behind the scenes look of what it takes to prepare and to facilitate this type of event. If your church is going out to a baseball game, you know, hey, this is us getting on a bus or meeting up or going to our seats or the baseball game. It's another engagement tool, and it's one of the most popular functions on Instagram. Memes are still around. I like this meme because it definitely speaks to all of our acronyms that we have. So again, in the sense of Instagram being very picture heavy, memes, you'll see a lot of those on Instagram. Like you say, you're about the meme life. And the thing about memes now is that you have all these meme generators to where if you were to go and Google a meme generator, you can create your own memes. Now, this one right here is one of humor, and memes are supposed to be humorous, but they could be used for a lot of reasons. They could be used to recruit volunteers. They could be used to talk about a VBS. They could be used to highlight something that's going on in the world. So there's the option or the ability to use pictures that already exist to tell a story. And you can kind of put your own headline there. But this one I think is funny because we do have a lot of acronyms in the church. You have to be careful of using those copyright pictures. More times than not, you'll be able to find some good stuff, and I'll show you where. Good point. It is always better to be careful than to be sorry. And with that being said, including some of these sites right here, which have just numerous pictures. So the one I'm going to point out first is the UMCOM Asset Bank, which is always a huge resource. Has anybody in here ever used Asset Bank? Okay, use Asset Bank. It's great. So Asset Bank, just to give you kind of a background of it, is anytime pictures are taken, for the most part throughout, the church, whether it's scenery, whether it's events, and this is globally, they get submitted to Asset Bank, and all of that is yours. All it takes is for you to reach out to Asset Bank, request permission to have an Asset Bank account. They'll send you back, hey, create a username and password, and you just have this whole repository full of pictures. And they're good. They're very good pictures. As you know, we have photographers all over the place taking pictures of everything. So when you get a chance, Google Asset Bank or United Methodist Asset Bank and request a username and password. You won't be disappointed. Find Good Media, umcom.org has good media. Pixabay and Unsplash, to the question on some of these pictures having copyright, like for places like Pixabay or Unsplash, photographers submit their pictures and they waive the right of copyright. So basically they're taking these pictures for people to use. Maybe they want publicity or maybe they just love the art. But those are good places where you can go and get copyright-free pictures and don't have to worry about, infringement and things of that nature. Pexels, same thing. Creation Swap is the same thing. Creation Swap specifically, at least in my experience, is specifically for Christian pictures, like Christian themed pictures. So that's another great place to go. And of course you have meme generators. And so those are all places you can go to find good media. And of course, there's always the option of taking your own pictures. I mean, that always becomes an option, but sometimes you need a quick picture to build something or to create something. And these are all great resources to be able to find. The question was, could we assume that the meme generators have royalty-free pictures? Some will, some won't. Be cautious and just kind of, be careful there.
If you're unsure whether or not a photo that you found online is copyright free, you can upload that image into Google and search images using a picture, and then it brings up all sorts of different options, and you can either change the tools so that it only shows images that are copyright free, like for non-commercial use or with modification or whatever. And then if your image is still there, then great. Even if you get it from another church website, maybe they paid for that image and so they're covered, but you're not. And it has happened even to our churches. And the smallest that I've seen where somebody's found to have been using an image that was not covered under their own license or copyright free, it was, I want to say it was like $50,000 fine. So just be careful. And when in doubt, contact Christina Dillabo at communications@dscumc.org. I'll help you learn how to search that copyright stuff. Dreamstime
is another site you said you could subscribe to. And again, if you use a lot of images, then it pays for itself.
So the question was about when you do an image search in Google and you get a bunch of images, some of them do say copyright, some of them don't say copyright. You still can't just go ahead and use it if you see it as a didn't say copyright, because like if I used an image illegally and I put it on my website, so my image comes up in your Google search and it doesn't come up as copyright protected because I didn't, follow the rules with it. So you want to use my image, well, you're going to get in trouble just as much as I would if somebody catches that, right? So the best thing to do is really to go to one of these sites that do offer copyright-free images. So sometimes there's images, let's say from a news reporter, whether it's video or photos, something that happened at one of our churches or in our community, and we want to publish an article about it. It's not a big deal to just go ahead and contact that reporter, whoever that's in the byline, ask them if I can use that image or can I get a copy of that video. I'm from XYZ church and I want to embed the video on my website for so many days. We're not selling anything. We're not going to make any money off of it. We just want more people to see what happened in our community. I've never had an instance where they said, no, you're not allowed to. I've never had an instance where they said, sure, you can, but you got to pay us so much money. But I have had a few times where they just, once they know that that's what I need, then they stop responding. So at that point, you can't use it. Sorry, the question online was if you want to use an image, does the copyright conversation only relate to social media and websites, or does it also relate to using the image in your bulletins or PowerPoint slides? It's really for everything. Because, these photographers are in it to make money. And if we use their image for free, then they're not making their money.
Good discussion. And it's a fair discussion. While copyright has existed as the advent of more information gets shared, it becomes even a more serious thing, because now people are aware that these pictures are flying around and maybe have use or being used without copyright. And as you said, they're in it to make money, photographers. So this is a very fair conversation. And again, it's something to be aware of, and a pitfall of using images, and some of the things we just have to be aware of. So that doesn't mean that images shouldn't be used. It just means that we have to be aware of the copyright instance of it, how they're used, where they're coming from. If when in doubt, go the other way. We also have subscription services. Kind of moving away from copyright, and again, all fair conversation. Just looking at Instagram, one thing that I will point out to you is if you're across multiple platforms and you're using Instagram, they have a function in Instagram to where you can post to Instagram and it lands on your other platforms as well. And so that's just a picture of that. More times than not, people use the Instagram, Facebook hookup. If I post on Instagram, then it'll land on Facebook. And that's really that, basically just saving you a step if you're planning to post in both places, or if that's something you do, feeding multiple platforms. One thing to point out, and this isn't an advertisement for them, but one company that I found to be pretty good with help managing posting, and you probably can't see it up there, is Hootsuite. They do a pretty good job of helping out. Hootsuite, yeah, Hoot, Suite, Suite. And I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, is that they have a free piece, and then they have like a pro piece with more options, and I think it's maybe like $19.99 maybe, but it also helps you manage your social media postings and getting them to multiple places if you're living in multiple places. Is that a great thing about Hootsuite is that it allows you to schedule. And so you could put things in there and set a time or date for it, and it'll automatically do it. And I'll even add on to that, if I may. One of the things that I find the most that happens with churches and organizations alike in their social media presence is not necessarily having the time to post, or, so having a tool at which you can just schedule your post is always helpful, because like whether it's social media or whether it's a website, one of the worst things that can happen is not being current. We call it a dead website or a dead social media platform when you have one, but there's no action or energy to it. So Hootsuite is one that I think is good. And I think you bring up a very good point, that it helps you schedule out things and be able to post even when you can't post physically. Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to Snapchat. Snapchat, I guess I should ask the question, how many churches are using Snapchat? Okay. Fair enough. For the record, we have no hands. So here's the thing about Snapchat, and I think the jury is still out. There are some churches, and that are using Snapchat, especially with youth groups, because Snapchat, again, is going to trend towards a very younger crowd, anywhere from your 12 to your 20 probably might be a Snapchat audience. The thing about Snapchat is, in my understanding and all I've seen, is that a Snapchat, you can create a message, but then it disappears after 10 seconds. Issue becoming that ministries are not so much wanting to have messages that disappear, because then things could get misconstrued, and obviously there's always something there. And so all that being said, you have a lot of ministries that don't touch it, wouldn't touch it, have no plans of touching it. And then you have some that are finding ways to use it successfully. I don't have the one right answer to whether use Snapchat or not. I can say that the younger audience is using it. Again, when we talk about youth groups and things of that nature, the one thing I can say is do whatever's responsible for your church. So if that's not using it, great. If that's using it, fine. But understand that there are some precautions that come with using that type of platform. Absolutely. And I think that's fine. I mean, obviously there's the difference in between people using it and it having church sanctioned use, because now the church's name is tied to it and it becomes a whole nother conversation. But it is, I mean, it's definitely an app that people are using. And funny enough, probably a year or two ago, Snapchat was going the way of the dodo bird. It was leaving, and then there was a resurgence around Snapchat, and now you find a large group of people on it. But I would just be mindful of having a church one, especially just because it's hard to manage the way the platform is set up. And so, thank you for that feedback, Carla. Other social media, of course, that's the Twitter bird there. Twitter is really just good for, in my opinion, it's kind of how people catch their news today, is on Twitter. As far as church usage, I'm not sure how much worth the time it is. Is anybody using Twitter for their church? Just a little bit? Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about Twitter is, again, it really has become a news source just by default. But at the same time, I think it's just so much information that it's really hard to use it for ministry. So you'll hear people talk about it, but I can't attest to how much worth it has as far as using your time to try to keep up a Twitter account. It's too changing, and sometimes we need things that are static, like our Instagram or Facebook or even a website, to be able to get a message across. But just be aware that it's there. It does offer a voice for people that want to use it. Also, we've talked about YouTube, especially in the sense of, which, by the way, the red square with the white triangle is YouTube, just for anybody that didn't know. We talked about that in the use of using Facebook Live and kind of tying our sermons and services into YouTube. And YouTube right now is highly popular with Gen Z, which is kind of our new age group on the rise here. And so that's kind of where they're getting a lot of their things. And so because of that, I want to veer here just for a second and still talk about social media, but kind of focus on Gen Z, because just as with any generational age group, they learn a different way, they view things differently, and those are the individuals that we're dealing with right now. They're our emerging age group. So let's take a look at Gen Z just for a second. The importance of Gen Z is that they're here. They're here now. And so by all accounts, studies and papers have been written, and they say that Gen Z is probably going to be the age group that helps us solve a lot of our societal problems, just because they see things differently. Now, the thing that I want to make you aware of, and maybe a challenge to the church, not impossible, but a challenge, is that the studies also show us that this is likely to date going to be the least religious group to ever be seen on the face of the earth. It's not that they're not involved, it's just that they're not big into religion. And I lift that up not as a downer, but as a way to let you know that there's a challenge at the door, and Gen Z is part of that challenge. You got something for us? Different marketing, absolutely. You want to elaborate some? No, but that's good. No, that's okay. Christina? Oh, I'll get to you.
So I was just going to share about the Gen Z and non-religious affiliation. That doesn't mean that they're not spiritual, or that they don't believe in a higher calling, or that they don't want to be involved in an outreach effort or some greater good. So don't discount them. Know that it is a challenge. We have to use different marketing language for them, and not necessarily a message of come be a part of us so that blah, blah, blah. It's got to be more about we're working hard to make this difference in our community, because we know that this is the issue, and there's people like little Sally that are hurt, and we can't stand by that. We need to make a difference. Do you want to join our efforts in blah, blah, blah? So it's not really about the church, but it's still about the church's ministry to the world to transform the world. Relationships.
Yeah. And both of you guys are 1,000% correct. And we're going to get to age group as well. I'm going to show you on the next slide. But yeah, so the meaning of them not being religious, as you said, doesn't mean they're not spiritual. It just means they have a different view of it. They have a different way of speaking. Social justice is the way with Gen Z. Now, luckily for United Methodist, we believe in social justice. So again, it's a challenge, but it's not an insurmountable thing. But social justice and being a part of something, and for lack of better words, healing of the world and the community is where they lie. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more so that you can get a look at Gen Z, because it's really important. So this is Gen Z. For our conversation, Gen Z, born between 1999 and 2015. So we're looking at anywhere right now from 4 years old to 20 years old is going to fall in our Gen Z category. They're likely to be or on track to be the most diverse group to date. They do not mind being with others that are different than them. Interestingly enough, they are the first real post 9/11 generation, which is always interesting because most of us were around for 9/11, and they're the first ones to come through and maybe have some of the protocol of post 9/11, but was never there to experience. That gives you a different viewpoint of the world. Screen time dominates their world. They're called screenagers, as a quote. The funny thing about them, though, is that as much as they love their screens, they're not huge sharers. They're more so on their collecting information than they are giving information. Does that sound like anybody in your community? I have this up here. I don't know if you can see it, but again, it will be in the presentation that you receive. I think this chart is so very interesting because for so long, everything we've done is how do we get millennials? What are the millennials doing? How do we attract millennials? Well, Gen Z is after the millennials, but you can't find, or you probably wouldn't be able to find two generational age groups that are so polar opposite. So everything that we've done to prepare for millennials now actually has to be changed to prepare for Gen Z. It would have been nice if they were a little bit alike. Then we could have kind of used some of the things we already learned. Just like take a millennial, for instance. A millennial might be tech savvy. They know technology and they've done these things. But if you're a millennial, you were likely born and then got technology. For Gen Z, you were kind of born with technology in your life. So it gives you a different view of information and the things that you receive. The way they communicate. Millennials, per this chart, millennials were always waiting to be discovered. Gen Z is ready to work for success right now. So when we talk about the challenge, again, it's not impossible because they're looking for an opportunity to be able to be a part of healing again and social justice. So it's just some things to think about. And again, you'll get this information. Gen Z, and very real but sobering, they're realists. Unfortunately, Gen Z lives in a world, it was born into a world with mass shootings, including schools. That gives you a different view of how people connect. Because all of it is really the things you see. We're all part of an environment. And so the things you see are psychologically. So, and again, we're in a social media conversation, but knowing things about Gen Z can help guide what your social media discussion is. As we talked about, how you market to them, how you talk to them is different than any group that we've ever talked to. Again, we talk about post 9/11 protocol. Gen Z has never known a nation not at war. They've never known it. They were born into a nation in war. Again, not a downer, a reality that they deal with. Gen Z was around to witness the fight for marriage equality. They've been in it. They've heard the good. They've heard the bad. They've heard the in-between. Gen Z was here for the first Black president. This is what they know. They're learning different things, but they were here for that. And probably most importantly, let a Gen Z tell it, there was always internet. It was always there. I mean, you were always able to search for things and have things at your fingertip. And so when we kind of look at that, what we have to be aware of is that there can be an overload of information. And I think that's why, per what I'm learning, because I'm learning too. This is all new for me. We actually, just to give you a little background, we just created a training, what we call a whiteboard training, where basically, and again, this is tangent, but a whiteboard training, and it's available to you. It's a free resource in our training portal, is where we take about 5 minutes. And if you ever seen like on TV where somebody's telling the story and then it's being drawn on a board, we did a whiteboard training for Gen Z. And so I was learning these things as well. And it's just interested just to hear how they think. And so if you get a chance, check that out on the website. So because they're realists, again, as Christina brought up, and you're 1000% correct, Christina, they are interested in social justice and involvement. The thing I would tell you is they're probably looking for more than just community service. Community service is great. We should continue community service, but they're looking for widespread, how do we make changes to society? How do we make changes to the world? They're very self-aware that their actions are going to shape the future. They're ready and willing to work for their own success, and they're always searching for authenticity in their leaders and organizations. And so again, even within our social media conversation, and as we talk about marketing and how we talk to this next emerging age group, here are some of the things that you need to know about them and some of the ways that a message might resonate. What questions do we have about Gen Z? It's a lot of information. Hopefully it's helpful. And then we've talked about pictures, but our friends in the Generation Z, they are all about the pictures. So that's just something to be aware of. FYI, every picture I pulled there is from Asset Bank. So anybody watching, no copyright, don't worry, don't call me, came from Asset Bank, it's royalty free. And so, yeah, they're all about the pictures. And the one thing I will point out about this last picture here is if you see the young lady holding the black sign, her name is Miracle, I want to pronounce her last name correct, but I believe it's Osman. She's from Malawi. And she's not United Methodist, and she was imprisoned in the Philippines. Oh, okay, I thought you had some. She was imprisoned in the Philippines under charges of helping to hold rallies against the Duarte, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, administration in the Philippines. And she's a part of the Global Fellows mission through GBGM. And so she was later released. But the reason I bring that up is because for us and our local churches may be the only thing about United Methodism that some of these Generation Z will ever know. And so when we start to talk about pictures and social media and how we share messages, know that that's a story. That's something you can share and that they can sink their teeth into and say, wow, this is some of the things that go on with, United Methodist Church. And again, when we talk about social justice. So there's a lot more to learn about Gen Z. But I just thought it was important to think about this new group, how they think and how we shape messages towards their learning and towards, what they think about. What questions do we have about Gen Z? I think we talked about earlier that the hope would be that if we have the kids and the parents are there, and maybe even vice versa, if we have the parents and the kids are there. Obviously, we know that's not always the case. But if I had to take a guess without having the right answer, probably just have to continue to challenge them. And it's probably a long conversation. There's a lot. And so much of what we know about Gen Z is new. You know, even for them to be from 4 to 20, the research is really just now starting to come to the forefront on who they are. And again, just like we develop curriculum, I got you, Christina, and I got you back there. Just like we develop curriculum for other age groups and their needs, I think we're just now getting there. And I'm not sure that everything is in place to be able to do that. So that's a really good but difficult question. But thank you for asking. Christina?
So for those of you that are not already part of the DSC Communications Facebook group, this is a great plug for that, because we did just a few days ago, I think we published an announcement that the Barna group is having a free online kind of a webinar sort of, that they're going to dive into what Gen Z is all about and how we as a church can talk to them, or get to know them better. So that's on, if you go to facebook.com/DSCUMC, you'll find the groups and subscribe to or join the communications group. And you can also ask questions there. It's only our church's communications people that are on there. So, and it's not shared worldwide or whatever, it's just to that group. So, we have real conversations, real questions, and I try to put out there any little bits that I get that I think would be useful for you guys, or that I found useful. I try to add that in there. So join the conversation.
That's really good. And I'll say also, just to add on to Christina, a good portion of the information that we're starting to gather is also from the Barna group as well, because they're on top of that research piece of trying to learn more about Gen Z and disseminate that information. So I would encourage you guys to join that group as well. We had a hand back there. To let everybody in, if you didn't hear, basically you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to the question of how to keep them, the church piece just hasn't been a priority for that section, or the parents, or whatever the case may be, and that's part of the challenge of how to keep them in the church. And I think it's a fair discussion. No age group is going to be cookie cutter. Obviously there's bullet points for the sake of saying here's what's being found out, but you got to get to know them. It's all about relationship, right? So I agree with you, Wandra.
We know that Gen Z is socially minded. They want to get involved. They want to make a difference. And not cookie cutter. Some people still don't care. It doesn't matter what age group you are. Right. So the marketing part of it, so we've got our message of what to say, and then we have to be thinking about, so what channel are we going to choose to get this message to those people? If they're not coming to your church meeting, to your church services, that's not the right channel for them. But maybe they are checking their Facebook all the time. Maybe they are checking their, whatever. So that's a channel that they're already comfortable in. So we've got to be thinking about our audience and how are we going to get this information out there. You certainly wouldn't try to get a newspaper advertising on paper, printed newspaper, for a preschooler. You wouldn't hand to a preschooler a handwritten invitation, maybe, because they maybe can't read that. So you got to be thinking about your desired audience. What is the means that they can connect with? How will they hear you best?
Fair enough. Good. All good discussion. Yeah. Gen Z, ladies and gentlemen. So something to look at as we kind of move from Gen Z, which again is still an open conversation. So if anything else comes up, don't hesitate to bring it up. Is just, I always like to bring up social media policy. If you're going to be on social media, whether you're getting started or whether your church is already on social media, I would encourage a social media policy. Some, for lack of better words, rules and regulations around how you interact on social media. What's okay to say, what's not okay to say, who can actually post, who has admin rights to be able to put things on your social media page. One thing that I find, and Christina kind of spoke to it as far as websites are concerned, people building websites, maybe having a password and then going on to a different church or just moving on in general. you can put something in your social media policy that says, here is the username and password. This shall not change. Because as people move churches, whether it be a leader or someone who built it, if they leave and you don't have the username and password, it's not impossible to get back control, but it takes work. So again, I just have a, go into resourceumc.org, search for social media policy. Can't talk enough about the fact that if you're going to have social media, then please be aware of safe sanctuaries and the rules. Now, I'm not a legalese, so I'm not going to take a dive into all the rules and regulations of safe sanctuaries. What I am going to say is it exists for a reason. Take a look at it, be mindful of it, and follow the rules. So definitely look at that as far as images go, as far as youth, location, settings, how you connect with them. It talks about all that in our safe sanctuaries. And again, it's there for a reason. Also, what I wanted to bring up to you is Discipleship Ministries just did a video probably a couple months ago around social media policy. And again, if you go on their website, you probably can even find it on Resource UMC. They have a video that talks about that. And one thing that I don't know why I didn't think of it, I just wasn't thinking in that direction. But one thing that they said in that video that kind of dawned on me is that safe sanctuaries it is not just for youth. It's for anybody, and of course our protected classes like our youth and then our seniors. I mean, those are things that we have to be mindful of. I mean, Carly, you said something that was huge today when it came to live streaming, like using full names on the sick and shut in, using traveling grace and using names. Like those are some things that, because we're well-meaning, we don't really think about. But if you sit and think about it, like, oh, okay, I can see how that could be an issue. So again, I guess my call to action would be, as you begin to do things, as you begin to stream, as you begin to use social media, just think about it. Think about some of the things that we do and how it affects others. And again, Safe Sanctuary is there for a reason, and that discipleship ministry there video is there for a reason. This is just an example of a media release form. Oftentimes, if you're going to have an event, you want to be taking pictures, it would behoove you to have a media release form, making sure you get the okay of people who may end up in pictures. This is an example. There's a number of examples online of media release forms, but again, my point in having this is just to lift up the fact that you should have a media release form. Somebody asked a question about negative comments, negative or hurtful comments. And so I'll tell you this, there's an article on umcom.org. I would definitely, if that's something you're interested in, take a look at that. And it's all about preventing and dealing with trolls. Obviously, and unfortunately, there are going to be hateful or hurtful people. And what's the quote say? Hurt people hurt people. So if you didn't get that, hurt people, then they hurt people. So all that being said is that we, in having that same presence, have to understand how to handle that. There's a number of ways. There's no right answer because there's always a different situation that's going on. But if, for my money, what I would say is definitely take a look at that article and do your research online. And again, thank you for the person that asked the question. There's just no right answer in dealing or preventing trolls, especially when social media is pretty much an open format. I mean, anybody can drop in there and say anything, and we just have to figure it out. The one thing I will tell you is don't fight hate with hate. That would be my one thing, because fighting hate with hate, nobody can tell the difference between the two. They can't tell the difference between the troll and you or your church if all you're doing is screaming at each other. So that would be my one feedback there. And it's a reality that if we're going to have that type of open platform, including Google, for reviews, we have to be able to combat that. And I think I said a little bit earlier as well that and this goes probably something that could be addressed in a social media policy or however your church handles social media, that if we're going to have a presence, we also have to have a person or persons to be able to monitor those type of things. And this kind of ties into the troll thing as well. I mean, when to delete something. I've read a couple things on this, and sometimes it can be tricky. Obviously, you have the ability social media to delete things or block people. There are some situations, and again, there's no one right answer here. There are some situations where if you've posted something or your church has posted something, because again, in today's information society, it could be the most well-meaning statement and it still be taken the wrong way. And so a lot of times the first thing we think, oh, well, we'll just get rid of it. And that's an option. There are other times where it behooves us to have that conversation. So you post something, I don't have an example, but you post something, it's taken the wrong way. Responding and having a conversation around what is actually meant is sometimes a better option than just deleting. Because when we're deleting, in many cases, unless it's just bad, what we're doing is avoiding a situation or a chance to discuss or a chance to open a mind. So again, I think it's worth talking about, but there's really no one right answer there, but I did want to lift that up. All right, teamwork makes the dream work. This is kind of the same of church marketing. The thing I would say here is, whether you're in social media, building up social media, whatever you're choosing to do, for most people or most churches, it will be hard to do it on your own. Now, in many cases, it may just be you, or it may just be one or two people. But if you have the opportunity to build a team that can help out, and we talked about Hootsuite, while they are not at your church, they are a resource that can help you. Christina has made herself available to be able to help you with social media and Facebook, so things of that nature. So again, kind of along the same lines as we talked about in church marketing, use help, use resources that's available to you to not drive you up a wall as it pertains to keeping your social media current. And that's a social media team. And then we have, that's the right email, correct? And so that's the email. Why don't you elaborate on what you would want them to do with that email, if you would?
So if your church is already using Facebook, or you're wanting to start a Facebook presence, just like with the website, I highly recommend that you add me as an admin on your church's Facebook, because again, first of all, number one, check to see, does the church actually own that Facebook, or did a member of the church create it and they are the actual owners? So we can help switch that around. We have had many churches, not tons, but we've had enough churches where now we're thinking, okay, we need to do things differently. So now I'm always trying to encourage churches to add me as as one of the admins on your Facebook group. On your Facebook page, so that you always have a fail-safe. If something happens, a pastor moves, your volunteer that was the admin before is upset at the church, or they moved, something happened, you have someone at the conference that can help you out with this. And it's my personal email address, because I don't have a separate Facebook account for work. So that's why it's the gmail.org. What else? Oh yeah, and the other thing that we can do is, so sometimes for the conference, we create videos, whether it's a message from the bishop, messages, we've done Advent messages from each of the district superintendents. Sometimes it's stuff that's from UMCOM. So I can load that video onto Facebook and set it up so that your church now can share that Facebook, or it's not sharing, it would be your church posts that video from their own Facebook account as if it came from your church. So it looks like it originated from your church. Okay, so we can do that together. Every video that I upload onto Facebook, I make it so that it is available, but there is some work that needs to be done on your church's Facebook to finish that connection. So I can help you with that, and Otherwise, you could always just share the videos from the conference, but certain videos, it makes more sense because it has more of a local church language to it, like apportionment videos, just sharing about this is what we do in missions and this is why it's important to give and blah, blah, blah. So there's that. One last piece that I wanted to mention. So we do have someone that's in the audience right now. His name is David Topping. Would you mind standing up here so that the people online can see you? I want you guys to get very familiar with David. Just stand like right around there and watch the camera for a sec. Because David Topping not only worked for the conference before in our IT and social media and communications, he also works for UMCOM as one of the IT support people, like in the training portals. And so if your church needs help, and let's say I'm busy, I can't help out or whatever, or depending on the certain problem, the conference can pay for David to help you guys one-on-one. Either sometimes it's going to your church to help you hands-on, or it might be virtually by sharing a screen. So just know there's tools, resources, there's a team available for you. So reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, just to piggyback on that, yeah, David does work as a trainer, facilitator for our website course, and he's a great resource. So I can't say enough about, what you were saying. And also in thinking about what you were just saying, as far as creating resources, if you're an admin on a church page and creating resources and then being able to post it and it looks like it comes directly from the church, I think that's pretty cool. Because, you can always share the videos that the conference has made, but there's something to be said for that personal touch. And when that church name is on it, there's nothing wrong with the Desert Southwest Conference, but when that church name is on it, that's a personal touch right there. I like that idea. That's very good. And then you could track it, yeah, because it's coming from their page versus a share. He was saying that because Google, and correct me anywhere I go wrong, because Google owns YouTube, creating YouTube videos and then post them on a page, it helps that SEO rating from Google, right? Or again, as we talked about, the search engine optimization, the likelihood that people will see it. That's good information. It's good information. So to lift that up, just to kind of, and again, correct me anywhere I go wrong, if we're doing the YouTube video, post it, but post it in the lower half of the page because it still, gives us the effect that we want from SEO. If we post it on the top half, right, the second half. Yeah, basically don't put it at the top. That's what we're saying, right? Don't put it at the top. Put it on the second half as if they were to scroll down, then they could see it. This is a content calendar. I love content calendars. So again, while we're not advertising Hootsuite, Hootsuite basically kind of does that job for you. Another option is to create your own content calendar. And again, one of the things that we find where churches become most frustrated with their social media presence is not being able to keep up with the posting. Like, you don't have to post every day, but being able to, because, say you want to post every 3 days or something like that, or every 4 days, like anything else in life, if you miss one, it's easier to miss the second one. So what a content calendar does is it allows you to plan ahead. Now you have to be, in charge of going back and say, okay, on Thursday, here's what we're going to post. 2 weeks from now, here's what we're going to post. That way, you don't have to go look for content when it's time to post, because God forbid you look for content, don't have any content, and you don't post anything. And again, you miss one time, easier to miss the second time. So content calendars can be done on your own, and those are always a great suggestion. As far as working with a team, just some of the questions, we always like to have questions that we ask ourselves as individuals or teams or churches. What are our goals for social media? Like, are we trying to build awareness? Is it advocacy? Is it to build engagement? Conversions? Are we trying to bring in more people to the church? Would we like to see more people at this program or that program? So essentially, you want to know, as you're posting or as you're building out a content calendar or as you're thinking about content in general, what is it that we're trying to achieve? I think that goes along with everything else that we've said about planning and preparation, is knowing what our focus is. How does content lead towards your goals? Kind of same thing. Yeah, how does content make the user the hero? And kind of just to explain that, I always look at it as how can a person looking at your content say, yeah, I want to be a part of that. I want to, the thing that they're doing sounds like something that I would want to be a part of. And that's just, quote unquote, the hero being part of the experience of your church. So a few other things to remember, and we're going to start wrapping up here. When we're posting, look at, obviously we want to talk about programs and ads and things, but as we talked about all day long, be able to espouse to your values and the vision of your church through your posting. Because again, as social media goes, while it is a place for people to gather information, it isn't the place where people go for information. They're going to be engaged. They're going to understand more. They're going to get a dose of your personality. And your personality, or your church's personality, can be found in the values and vision. Try to, continue as you continue your process, look at engaging and balanced content. And basically all that means is switch it up. Sometimes you're going to post some things for inspiration. Sometimes you're going to post programming things. Sometimes you're just going to post things just for fun. It doesn't have to have a necessarily end goal. Sometimes it's like, I think this is fun. I think this is something nice. I'll post that. Do behind the scenes. Whenever you have the opportunity to do behind the scenes and things are getting set up or we're getting ready to plan for something, people want to see that. There's work. For all the work we do, there is work that goes into that work. There is planning for the plan. So show that to your community and people that frequent your page. In videos, we've talked about that. Pictures and videos are always good. We have our start today again. Take advantage of available resources. This essentially, these next few slides are the slides that I showed during the church marketing spiel. I'll run through them only because we probably have some folks sitting at home that may have joined us. If you have any questions as I run through them, feel free. After that, I'll take any Q&A and I'll hang out as long as you need me to. So again, talked about the church marketing plan tool, MyCom newsletter. There's a communication topic. It's probably somewhere on MyCom, podcasts, interviews, videos. We have grants from the local church. This is particularly an advertisement for the Christmas one last year. There will be a Christmas one this year. And again, applying for that grant, being accepted to that grant, you get $400 towards different materials. Resource UMC is the website that we've talked about numerous times where you can go and connect with a lot of resources. Resource UMC comes in, is also written in Korean, also written in Spanish. Local church services, as Christina lifted up for us earlier, also as part of the grants program. And they also have the ability to help out with websites and social media and a lot of different communication tools that you're looking at working on. Again, this is the training department. This is part of our online training portal. The training portal is open 24/7. We do not close holidays. We're always there. It is a blessing because it is online, so you can get to it anytime. As a couple of examples of our courses that we have, feel free to go check them out. And then lastly, of course, as the United Methodist, we have a news service. And it just tells you all about the things that's going on in Connection. And they have a daily digest or weekly digest. You can go check it out or you can subscribe. It's really a choice. But I just wanted to let you know, be aware that that is there for you as a resource. That is my name. That is my title. And that is my email. Feel free to reach out to me. If there's any questions I can answer for you, I will be happy to. If I cannot, I will try to get you to the person who can. I am best contacted. If you like a card, I have a few cards. I'm best available by email. Again, it has been a blessing to be here with you guys. Very humbled, and again, that you would come hang out with me for a little while. And I hope you were able to take a few things. And I'm here to talk if you have any questions. And with no further ado, I'm done.